Hello and welcome to New Filmmakers Los Angeles. My name is Danny De Lillo. I'm delighted to be joined with Michelle Hernandez, who made a fantastic film, Douk. For those that haven't seen it, let's take a look at a clip.
Irene, are the monsters in your story real?
No, they're just stories to scare you.
She can't know that those stories are real.
Michelle, thank you for joining us today. I just spoke to you in the agreement. I'm going to say it again. I'm so happy that you made this film. It's a very, very special film and a very important film. But for those that haven't seen it, tell us a brief synopsis.
Yeah, so Douk is a story about the Native boarding school experience. It takes place in the early 1900s. These boarding schools actually started in the late 1800s and went all the way to 1970. They were created by the United States government in order to assimilate Native children into Western cultures. At these schools, a lot of the kids faced a lot of sexual abuse, mental and physical. It was their way to take away our traditions, our language, and our practices. And they thought that they were going to make us better by adapting into this Western culture.
It's disgusting and devastating. It really is. You cannot watch your film. And if you don't know about this already, in which every child should be learning in school about these horrific things that took place. It's devastating. It's horrible. But like, for you personally, when was that moment for you where you're like, I've got to turn this into a film. I need to make this happen.
Yeah, so Douk came about because I was at that time I was in my master's program. And so they have us do a thesis. And for me, I really wanted to make a story that kind of meant a lot to me. And so it was really hard to think about it. And then I realized that there really wasn't a story that told or talked about the boarding school experience. Unfortunately, my great grandmother was one of these children. This is a history that I have grown up knowing. I am also Native. I'm Wiyot. I'm from Northern California. And so these schools take place all over the United States. And like I mentioned earlier, I'd known about this history. And so I wanted to make a short story that people could watch, and then we could have a discussion afterwards. And so what I had found out doing my research a little was when I would tell people, do you know about the Native boarding school? When I would talk about Douk, mostly everyone would say no. And so then it became a whole history lesson. And so I was like, I'm really happy I'm making this film. We really need to talk about it, especially here in the United States. I know that boarding schools happen also in Canada, and they have in Canada acknowledged that they have done these things to the Natives up there. But here in the United States, we haven't acknowledged that we did this to tribal citizens in the United States.
I mean, I go as far as saying this should be, every school should watch this as part of their history lesson. I mean, it's that important. This particular family that you focused in upon, just a beautiful family. It was just heart-wrenching because, if people can put themselves in other people's shoes and realize this could have been any family, any loving, kind-hearted family that would just want the best for their kids. And this existed in the most horrific circumstances, for Native Americans. It's disgusting. But how did you go about bringing your cast together? Because they were brilliant. And I imagine as well, because this is the truth, this is historical. How difficult was it to sort of almost, direct and have them act this as well?
Yeah, so the acting kind of was the hardest, or casting our actors was kind of the hardest part about this film. I really wanted it to be an all Native cast within the family. Ideally, I wanted it to be a Wiyot family, Wiyot actors. Unfortunately, the tribe I'm from, we don't really have actors. So then I went and reached out to the Yurok and the Hupa and the Tola, who are neighboring tribes. And we didn't really get any bites for it. So I was a little nervous and struggling. I also wanted to cast within our tribe because we have a very distinct look. We do not look like a Plains Indian where they have very sharp cheekbones. We have chubbier cheeks. We have a very distinct look. So, Natives throughout the United States look very different from each other. And so I went on Instagram, I looked native actors and was like, oh, this actor can pass as Wiyot. And it was Roseanne who plays the mother. So I reached out to her. And then the father I kind of had seen from different shows. And I also remember watching the shows and being like, oh, he could be Wiyot too. So I reached out to them. So they were the first kind of to be casted. And then Irene and Wanda, who play the sisters. Oh, well, actually I lied. Wanda was the first to be casted. What happened is me and my producers had an emergency meeting to do the casting. And so we went up north and did a casting call. Like I said, we didn't really get any bites. We went to an 8th grade graduation, which happened to be Irene's, the actress who plays Irene, 8th grade graduation. So I know Irene is my little sister, and so I'll get to how we casted her.
Oh.
Yeah, and so we went to the 8th grade graduation. My producer saw this little girl running around at the graduation and was like, oh my gosh, she's so cute. We should cast her. And I looked at her and I go, that's my cousin. No, we're not. No. So then she's like, no, go do it. So I talked to my uncle and told him about my project. And I go, can we do like a casting call with her? Is she okay to come in and audition for this part? And he's like, yeah, go ahead. And so we auditioned her. And apparently that day at school, she was running around her little classroom saying, I'm going to be a movie star.
Oh.
So we casted her that way. And then Irene, our lead, is the last character that we casted. We had originally had someone else for that role. It fell through, so we didn't go with that. And this was about a month before production. And so we had bought all our plane tickets. And at that time, we lived in Washington, D.C., and we were shooting in Northern California. So like everything was ready to go except for our lead. So I was panicking.
Oh, no.
And we had a meeting, and I went on Facebook, and then I happened to fall on a photo of my sister, and my producers were like, oh, who's that? And I was like, oh, that's my little sister, Joyce. And she's like, oh my gosh, she's perfect for the role. And I was like, no. And she's like, well, you better do something because we don't have Irene. So I called my little sister, and she was in the gym class, or her gym class. And she's like, what do you want? And I was like, oh, hey, you want to be in my movie? And she's like, no. So then I called my mom and convinced my mom. And we also convinced her because we said we were going to pay her like $50. And so she's like, sure, I'll be in your movie. And now she really likes acting, and I'm casting her for another project we have. But yeah.
How awesome is that, Michelle?
Yeah.
That's amazing. Oh, I'm so glad it worked out, and, you know, keep it in the family. I love that as well, you know, and definitely tell your younger, you know, actors, they are movie stars, and they were stars in this film. Wow, that's amazing. That's an amazing story of how you brought your team together. I mean, it's amazing where it's sometimes sitting right in front of you, right? And Instagram's also good too. So, you know, you made it. And I love that you were, you know, again, trying to, you know, doing your hardest to, you know, to keep it, you know, authentic and authentic to your tribe. I think that's obviously very important thing. Now you filmed in Northern California, and, you know, I kept thinking how beautiful this place was that you filmed it as well. You know, obviously a lot of yours was exterior as well. So I thought, did Michelle have any challenges filming this? Like, you know, it looked like it could have had some complicated scenes. How was that for you? Were any challenges in making the film?
So the biggest challenge was, as you can tell, mostly the whole movie is during the day.
Yes.
We shot it in March. And so around March, you have that time where the sun goes down a little earlier than you want. So that was the biggest challenge. And I remember talking to my DP, and he was like, well, make it work. And I was like, why did I do this to ourselves? And the reason we shot in March instead of summers where we had longer days was up in Northern California, it rains almost every day, every month. And so March is our kind of little open window where we can guesstimate. And so we decided March, we went and shot the movie. We would always be chasing light throughout the day, especially working with young children who have never acted, and some of them were learning their lines on the spot. So that was a struggle. But we got the movie made, and so that was amazing. I feel really blessed for the team I had, because they worked with me and we got this film made, and now we have this product that we get to show everyone.
It's amazing, Michelle. It really is like an incredible film. And I kept thinking, I mean, for you, this is obviously something that is important to you. It's in your heart. It's in your family. You know, your great grandmother experienced this, and, you know, obviously you've got your own family involved with this. For you as a director, how do you approach something like this with your actors? I mean, are you quite hands-on with them? How do you explore the process and the circumstances? Because these are really high you know, high circumstances of emotional, intensive scenes. How do you work with your actors?
Yeah, so, well, this was a little different because I've worked with professional actors, which we had 2 professional actors on set, and then we had these non-professional actors, the 2 girls. And so for them, I wanted to focus more on them to kind of hone in on their skills because I knew they could do it. They were like talented kids that I've known my entire life. But with them, I discussed out, we went over the history. And at first, I was a little hesitant to go over with my little cousin, who was at the time 7 years old, because it is a hard subject to talk about. And I discussed it with her, and she already knew about it because, like I said, we talk about this in our families, we talk about this in our tribes. But what amazed me was that she understood exactly the things that had happened and the traumas that had happened, and she kind of knew how to take that in. So again, I talk to them about these subjects, and that's kind of how I work. And then I prepare them. So like when we had the running scene, I would talk to the kids and be like, okay, so just imagine you being taken from your parents. And to my older sister, or my younger sister, I told her, you know, imagine we have a baby sister, and I was like, imagine them taking Wanda. So I named the character after my little sister. Mm-hmm. So I was like, imagine Wanda being taken. And then she was like, it was kind of hard for her, but I sat down and we discussed more. So I really like to talk to them about what I want the characters to feel and the emotion to pull out. So that kind of helped me work with hone my skills in and working with non-actors, working with professional actors. That was kind of easier because they knew what I wanted, and I would tell them or prepare them, like the crying scene. I'd be like, okay, you're gonna cry. You've just found out your children are gonna be taken. Imagine, you know, a family member being taken, and how does that make you feel? And if they need more detail, we'd go into more detail. So that's kind of how I'm a very hands-on. Yeah, like to talk to them and tell them kind of what I want as a director.
Yeah, I mean, well, I mean, I think with a film like this, it's so important just to really, you know, go through that journey with your actors, as painful as it actually is as well. You know, to sort of, you know, talk it through. I think, I mean, this film, as I've mentioned, you know, several times in this interview already, you know, I think needs to be seen by every citizen, resident of the United States of America and the world, because I think, you know, unfortunately, this is a story that is so important and is not heard enough. And I'm just curious for you personally, what did you want your audience to take from this film?
So what I wanted my audience to take is to learn a little history lesson, and then to go on their own and educate themselves more. I'm learning, you know, that I can educate people through my film, but I also need to take the time that I don't need to educate everyone outside of the film, that I can have people go outside. I am not a history teacher. Something we as Native people are learning is that it takes a lot of time and effort to teach people stuff. So for me, I just want to create this discussion and then have them realize, you know, these things happen. Let me educate myself more, and then they can go out and teach other people. So that's kind of what I want to get. I also just want to create a discussion. I want people to know that this happened, and that because these things, there's a lot of stuff that has happened within our tribes. Currently in my tribe, we woke up our traditions. We are waking up our language. Though at that time they wanted to take those from us, we are resilient people. Mm-hmm. And so I'm like, you know, these things happen, but we're resilient. So what I want to do is create a discussion and have people become our allies who are non-native, and help us, you know, go farther, get back our land rights, talk about these histories, and try to heal us. You know, we're healing ourselves as a tribe, but it's nice to have allies to come and discuss these things. And that's kind of what I want, you know, to do after it's done.
I love that you mentioned that. Like, I love that, you know, it shouldn't be all on your shoulders to educate other people. And I think, you know, but you've created the openness for discussion through your film. And as I say, giving people, you know, an understanding of the history of this country. And, you know, I love that you mentioned that, because actually the first thing I did after your film was go and research myself and look more deeply and closely and learning more about the tribes and what people have been through, and, you know, how we can as a community, you know, support and be an ally, like you said. And so that's great. You did it for me personally. So I really am excited for this to happen everywhere else as well. You know, it's a joy to have your film with us at New Filmmakers LA. And even in these circumstances, we need to make sure, your stories, get heard. I'm curious for you, what is next for you?
So I'm currently actually working on a web series. I think I had mentioned earlier that I was working on a project with my little sister. So she will be in this web series. We're just around her. It's called Somewhat Fairly. So it's about a young teenager who finds out that fairy godparents are real. But unfortunately, she never got one as a child. And so it's her journey of finding one. And they're kind of this odd couple where he's really, really bad at his job and she's just a very moody teenager. So it's a journey of them coming together and realizing that they are meant for each other. It's like a balance of a parent and a child. So they go on this crazy journey. That's what I'm currently working on.
Oh, that's exciting. And it makes me so happy that you ignited your younger sister's career as an actor as well. This is amazing. So, I really feel that, the one thing that I've, even discovered from watching just this project alone is, you take us there and you put us right in there in the middle, feeling everything. And so I'm very excited to see your web series. I'm just curious for you as a director, as a filmmaker, is there any kind of piece of advice that you go by, you could share with our filmmaking audience?
Yeah. When most of these panels and discussions and talks that I've done, I usually just tell people make something. Like, you have a cell phone, grab some friends and just make content. I know a lot of people are hesitant and they're like, I want to be a filmmaker, but I don't know how to do it. And honestly, you just take your phone and you go out there and make stuff. It may not be your greatest stuff, but you learn. And that's what I'm learning as a director, is that you're constantly learning. And I'm very open to having new challenges, is because I know I'll grow. And so that's why I tell everyone, like, you start somewhere. And so why not get your phone and go for it?
I love that. And particularly in these times when we've got limited resources and everything else, that's really good. It's an honor to have you at New Filmmakers. It's an honor you shared this incredible, important story that again, we will do everything in our power to make sure this outreach is everywhere it deserves to go. And so I just want to say thank you for taking the time to make this story, not just for your own family, but for many, many families out there, and making sure, this story is understood and heard, and how we can be better as human beings, moving forward. So thank you from the bottom of our heart, and just keep making more movies and bring your web series to us too, please.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you very much, Michelle.